New York Congressman Ritchie Torres was in the hot seat during a viral interview that's circulating on social media. Jewish talk show host Adam Friedland confronted the Democratic lawmaker over his staunch and unwavering support of Israel. Let's watch.
Israeli government policy should have no bearing on... If you have disagreements with the Israeli government, you should voice your criticism of the Israeli government. But there is no justification for intimidation or harassment against American Jews.
I'm telling you as a Jew right now that we are receiving a lot more hate because of what the people with a flag that has a Jewish star on are doing to other people right now. I'm telling you as a Jewish person how painful it is for us to say, and it hurts my stomach to say this, so you're going to say, I disagree, that this is a genocide. And that hurts to say that a Jew could do that.
There was also this very heated exchange.
I mean, Hamas murdered thousands of people, so there's no...
So what does that mean?
That Hamas is a terrorist organization for murdering innocent children and civilians.
How many civilians have been killed in this war?
The war is a tragedy, but
90% of them have been. But 90% of them have been civilians. They've killed journalists. They've killed journalists.
People have been killed in a war. It's been a tragedy.
They've killed people waiting for aid.
And it all capped off with this moment.
No, I think you had an agenda to speak about this.
I didn't have an agenda.
I really did.
It's your number one topic.
It's not my number one topic. It's just not.
It is your...
It's not my number one topic. It's not
what I saw.
Well, then, I'm happy I was not elected on Israel. You don't get elected in the South Bronx. And
I'm not trying to make you feel bad or like...
No, but I just don't think you know what you're talking about.
For those who are not familiar with Friedland, he says he was raised as a Zionist, but that his perspective on Israel shifted after living there for a year and witnessing Palestinian living conditions in the West Bank. He went on to major in Middle Eastern Studies at the GW University here in D.C. Meanwhile, Torres is a stalwart Israel supporter. According to Zateo, he received $500,000 in donations from AIPAC in 2024 alone. The organization also spent $26,000 in 2023 to bring the Bronx congressman to Tel Aviv for 10 days, where he met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Great interview, I thought, for a start, and I would commend Adam Friedland for it. I think that there are a couple of factors here. One is the mere fact that interviews like that exist is a good thing, I think. That's the kind of interview that the quote-unquote mainstream media would never do, not only because of the skepticism about Torres's position, but just because I thought that the obvious emotion with which Friedland put forward his position was very impactful and was important. Now, it's no big surprise that I totally disagree with Ritchie Torres' views of that conflict, but also of what I consider his constant sort of disparagement of criticisms of Israel's conduct in the conflict. To then turn around and say to Friedland that he doesn't know what he's talking about seems just untrue to me. And we noted the fact that not only is he of Jewish heritage, but he has studied the conflict quite widely. So it was a very, very effective interview, and the fact that it has gone so viral, I think, is telling in itself.
Yeah, it was very compelling, and I think a testament to independent media and new media that something like this could happen. We've seen more congressmen and senators sitting down with podcast folks and having these long-ranging conversations that end up being much more instructive, I think, about where they stand on issues than any 3 to 5 minute cable news hit ever could. I found the sentiments from Friedland to be quite emotional and compelling, and Torres, I found, kept sort of reverting back to the October 7th talking point, which is, it's fair to note that as the impetus for the war. And I don't think anyone would dispute the idea that Israel should have done something in response that was just and proportional. But we are now 2 years almost beyond that point, and we have seen a lot of civilian casualties. We have seen a lot of quote-unquote mistakes from the IDF and the Israeli government in the targeting of Palestinian civilians. And there isn't a justification for that. And I think conflating the acknowledgement of that with anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, which I think Ritchie Torres did tend to do in another part of the interview that we didn't play, is really missing the point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, Torres and people of his ilk have a tendency, I think, to argue that shifts in American public opinion, either against Israel or in favor of the Palestinians, are the consequence of some nefarious influence. It's because, you know, academia is too left-wing, or the Democratic Party is too left-wing, or whatever. And in fact, what seems clear to me is the degree to which criticism of Israel has expanded and built is because of people taking an entirely rational view of what has taken place. Nobody outside of the hardest fringes really disputes that Israel had a right to respond to what I have always said was a heinous attack on October 7th and targeting hundreds of civilians and children and all the rest of it. But at this point, when so many civilians have been killed, when people are being starved, when Israel is utilizing American munitions for much of this, while at the same time bridling at the suggestion that the US should have any right to impose any restraints upon it. People understandably have an objection to that. And, you know, you and I would have different views on many topics, and, you know, you're obviously increasingly critical of Israel's conduct yourself. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is almost as far right as you can get, calling this a genocide on the part of Israel. I think that speaks to people's horror at what we have witnessed.
That's right. And you're exactly right. When we were doing this show in the early days following October 7th, I was willing to give Israel a lot of leeway because they had suffered this heinous terror attack. And I watched the October 7th footage on Capitol Hill and was incredibly disturbed, and honestly, it affected me greatly. I left in tears. I felt sick to my stomach for a week afterwards. It was really, really awful. But that was then, and this is now, right? Things have changed. Israel has, I think, gone way beyond the scope of what would be an appropriate response to this. They've now made clear that they actually want to replace Gazan leadership at their own behest, apparently not even at the will of the Palestinians. And this is an increasing sentiment among young people on the right. And even outside of the specifics of this conflict, I think young people on the right feel very skeptical about U.S. aid to Israel really in any context, not even if they weren't using it for this current war in Gaza. They would look at that and say, what is our return on investment? We get intelligence from Assad, great, but is that really worth the hundreds of billions of dollars that we give, or the munitions that we give them? Yeah. Is that worth us getting pulled into a potential war with Iran, right? How is any of this really America first? And the evangelical portion of the Republican Party that is very invested in the future of Israel for religious and biblical reasons is getting older and doesn't have as much influence anymore. So I think Trump would do well to just be aware, at least, of this changing dynamic in the party. Yeah, and just finally on that point, Amber, I do think that it is important when people like Netanyahu gloat or celebrate what he considers the military victories in this campaign. I think the generational shift that you're pointing out is really important, because the consequences of that shift are going to ripple through American politics and views of Israel for years and decades to this, because there is such a shift among young people across the board to a more Israel skeptical position. That's right. So. Meanwhile, Governor Gavin Newsom says Donald Trump is serious about not having any running for a third presidential term in 2028. After this, a look at his plea to Americans to, quote, wake up.